Nobody moves to Scotts Valley to look at the side of a building. One of the proposed buildings going up here is going to be 85 feet tall.
Willow Glen, they have a 7-story apartment complex going up. People are livid over that.
We are no longer in control of what our city looks like.
These laws bypass the will of the people.
We were threatened by the Director of Housing and Community Development. Said, Scotts Valley, if you get in the way of this project, we will bring the full force of the Attorney General's office down on you.
Oh my gosh. Have you noticed all the construction popping up lately? New apartment blocks, dense housing projects, developments squeezed into every corner of our towns. If it feels like it's happening fast, you're not imagining it. Over the past few years, the California State Assembly and Senate have passed a wave of new housing bills that override local control, force cities to approve high-density projects, and dramatically reshape the character of our communities. These laws were sold as solutions to the housing crisis, but the impacts we're seeing on the ground are raising serious concerns. Cities are strained, infrastructure is stretched, neighborhoods are changing in ways residents never agreed to. Because of legislation passed by the California Senate and Assembly, we have lost local control, and the results are not looking good. And in Morgan Hill, where I live, traffic is already a daily struggle, and now hundreds of new housing units are being added to the mix. Affordable housing matters, but here's the challenge. Because of how some of these projects are structured, cities receive zero property tax revenue from many of these projects. That means more cars on the road, more pressure on city services, and no financial support coming back to help the community absorb the impact. Cities across California are facing similar situations as state housing mandates passed by our Senate and Assembly override local planning. Today, we're taking a deeper dive into what's really going on. I'll be talking with Steve Clark, Vice Mayor of Scotts Valley, about how these state-mandated housing rules are affecting small cities, what's happening behind the scenes, and what this means for the future of our local communities. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for talking to me about this. You know, this really is interesting. If you look at the landscape of what California has done with its, everything's a crisis, right? Everything in the California legislature is a crisis. In fact, you even look at the title of its SB 330, which is one of the predominant laws here. It's the Housing Crisis Act. And so what they have done is they've stripped away local control over what happens to our city. You know, you live in a city like Scotts Valley, and as you can see here, it's a beautiful community. We love our mountains, we love our trees, we love our outdoor recreation. Nobody moves to Scotts Valley to look at the side of a building. Yeah, and that is what a lot of these laws have brought on us now, is they've taken away the local control and sort of how we can define what amenities and what sort of environment even that we want for our community. And it's funny because so many of the people in the legislature are claim to be so committed to the environment.
Yes.
But you look at the way they're stripping away the environment in a community like Scotts Valley, where, you know, like I said, we love our mountains, we love our trees, we love our outdoor activities, and now they've got these mechanisms in place to allow for these buildings and building sizes that are just out of step with this community.
So let me ask you, do you need all this additional housing? I know you have to have, what, 1,200 new housing units, affordable housing units here in Scotts Valley?
Well, you know, and it's not even so much about the number of housing units, although for a city like Scotts Valley, we're built out. We don't have extra room where we can expand outside of our city limits or our borders. So everything that we do has got to be infill, right? We have to use the land that's there. But the problem is this is taking away very important commercial assets. It's like, where do you think all of these people are going to work? once they live here in our community. And so they're taking away commercial building opportunities for us and replacing it with high density housing. And so for us, yeah, we have to add 1,200 housing units, which is roughly a quarter of our current housing allocation in terms of our number of units. And so that's a significant and steep climb for us. When you look at that, it really starts to affect a lot of your infrastructure.
Yes.
Our roads weren't built for that. Our wastewater treatment plant wasn't built for that. Our water allocation wasn't built for that. And so now these things are being forced on us, and the state's telling us, tough, you've got to figure it out.
And they don't contribute financially to the infrastructure?
No, in fact, I've had conversations with both of our local representatives and talking about how this really is an unfunded mandate, because the state is mandating these things on top of cities and offering nothing in the way of financial relief, grants, or any kind of programs to help us deal with the growth that has to happen in this. And so what happens is our local residents end up footing the bill for this.
Now, what about public safety, like firefighters and police? Of course, when you have more people, you need more emergency response. Do they pay for any of that, or is that something the city has to figure out, how they're going to fund all of that?
Yeah, the city's going to have to figure this out. And when you look at the typical way in which fire and police assets are allocated, one of the traditional measurements is the number of officers or the number of firefighters or apparatus you have per 1,000 residents. And so when you're increasing your resident population, obviously you're going to need more public safety resources. Now that's more than just more police officers and more firefighters, but all the equipment and the space to accommodate that goes along with that.
Wow.
So it's an expensive proposition for cities, to take this on. And with that growth, you have to have those resources. So here's an interesting thing that happens now with these affordable housing units that are going up, in the one proposed and one that's going up really just a few blocks from where we are right now. Those were previously commercial properties, and we were receiving commercial property tax on those. When they become affordable housing, we no longer get the property tax. And so it's a net loss for the city.
Wow.
So we're going to have to invest more in infrastructure and more in our local resources in terms of like our police, our fire, our planning department, our public works department. It goes well beyond just what the traditional thought of public safety. But we're going to have to spend more money now to up those resources while we're losing property tax revenue that could be helping to pay for this.
I think that most people do not realize that when a city builds affordable housing, you do not get any property tax revenue. I was shocked when I found that out. And I think a lot of people, when they elect their representatives who vote for some of these things, don't factor in the true consequences of what is going to happen in their community from the passage of these laws. It's unintended consequences gone crazy. I have seen this same issue that's happening here in Scotts Valley happening all across District 28, which is my district. Willow Glen, they have a 7-story apartment complex going up. People are livid over that. Morgan Hill, there's building projects everywhere. Let's talk a little bit about traffic. That seems to be a really big concern. From what I understand, there's no real requirements for parking or anything like that associated with some of these low-income housing projects.
Well, what the state's done so there's a couple of the predominant state laws that are really kind of writing this. It's SB 330, AB 2011, and then also the density bonus law. So these things kind of get mashed together and can get used and built on top of each other. And so it allows builders to build above your normal density limits, so more units per acre. It allows them to ask for exemptions, and by law we have to grant them exemptions for building height. For instance, here in Scotts Valley we have a building height limit of 35 feet. Why? Because we like our mountains and trees. That one of the proposed buildings going up here is going to be 85 feet tall 7 stories. The building that's just a few blocks from us here, again, that exceeded our height limit that we allow for this. And so we are no longer in control of what our city looks like and what sort of environment we want to enjoy. The city goes to great pains to develop their housing element, develop their general plan. In fact, I was on the city's general plan advisory committee. We spent well over 4 years trying to put this together and carefully craft what is going to be best for our city, what do we have the resources to manage in all of these areas, public safety, traffic, public
And
works.
all that's basically put by the side because of these housing mandates?
It's literally, if I could use the comparative analogy here, it's literally bulldozed.
Wow.
And it's allowing these developers to run roughshod over our very carefully planned community standards.
So people elect you, they elect the mayor,
Yeah.
but these laws bypass the will of the people. It doesn't seem fair at all, and I know that a lot of residents have complained about it. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know you've had public meetings where people have attended and let their voice be heard, and we want to make sure that people understand it is not your local elected city council, mayor. These people are not the ones who are building these high-rises. It's the state.
Our authority has been stripped away from us. In fact, so much, and this is under threat of either fines or a loss of our permitting authority. In fact, if I can just share one story with you, this building that's just a couple blocks away from us, we got no public process in that. That didn't even come before council for us to be able to vote on that, to apply any of our local standards to it. So we had one shot. We went up to Sacramento. It was during a meeting where they were talking about funding for this project. And we said, this is our one shot. And we went up to Sacramento to say, hey, look, we don't oppose housing. We welcome the housing, but we have a better spot for it. Not a prime commercial building that is going to provide jobs for all of these people that you want to move into my city, right? And so this is a great building for that. If we build it, if we tear that building down, we build on that site, we lose that community asset. So all we're asking is that you let us find a different location for this and not fund it at this one building and cause us to lose that. We were threatened by the Director of Housing and Community Development. Said, Scotts Valley, if you get in the way of this project, we will bring the full force of the Attorney General's office down on you.
Oh my gosh.
And so none of us really wanted to see Rob Bonta for a lot of
reasons. No,
and
also the city would have to defend itself. That would bankrupt the city having to pay the lawyer fees.
And that's what we're seeing is cities across California who have challenged this have not been successful. The law was well written in terms of being a law that was unassailable. And so cities have tried to say, hey, wait, we would just like some local control and push back on this. And the California state legislature has actually responded by making things tougher for cities and demanding more enforcement on cities for this.
Now, what about the builders? Are they benefiting from doing these projects along with the state?
Oh my gosh, yeah, the builders are absolutely benefiting from this. I mean, this one proposed project is an $80 million project. And so where's that money going, right? Yes. And we know that one of the chief sponsors behind a lot of this is the Northern California Carpenters Union. They're benefiting from it too. Now, I don't mind providing the jobs. I think that that's great and that's outstanding, but what happens when all this goes away? And we've built up this resource of people.
Do you even have the people to occupy the units? Do you have people that are looking for this type of housing right now in Scotts Valley? Well, this seems to be a pretty tight-knit community. It's not like downtown San Jose where you have a lot of people coming in from all these different places for new jobs and high tech and stuff like that. Right. I understand these housing mandates and some of these rules in communities like that. I think it can work in a community like Oakland or San Francisco where they need more housing for all the jobs and stuff. But for communities like Morgan Hill, towns like Willow Glen, cities like Scotts Valley, it's just wrong. It doesn't fit into what the real needs are, and it's almost like they made a one-size-fits-all rule, and they're trying to apply it across the board everywhere where it doesn't really work.
Well, they absolutely did. In fact, if you look at where this came out of Oakland and San Francisco, and I've often said that the state legislature is not going to be happy until every city is as impacted and as crowded and as congested as Los Angeles, because they're really attacking these smaller bedroom, more relaxed. People move here because you want a little space. If you want to go live in an urban environment, go right ahead. There's nothing wrong with it. There's plenty of opportunities, but don't turn everywhere into that, because not everybody wants to live in that kind of an environment.
They're taking away our choices, though. They want to determine.
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
wow.
They are absolutely forcing this. They're mandating this on. It's funny, you see all these No Kings protests. It seems to me like this is a pretty kingly thing to do, to override city ordinances and carefully crafted local planning ordinances. And so you'd asked about community members, and the community doesn't understand this in large part. They're starting to get educated on it because they're seeing what's going to be potentially be the negative impacts of this in their communities, and they're rightfully concerned. Those of us on city council absolutely share those concerns, and we're as furious about it as they are. And again, it's not about trying to push away housing. We welcome housing. We welcome affordable housing. I'd love for my own kids to be able to afford to buy a house. So I get it and I understand that. But when you look at the allocation of units in these affordable housing units, what you see is most of the units are going to be rented out or purchased by the top tier of these affordability tiers. That's anybody who makes up to 120% of the area median income, right? And so you're not really benefiting a majority of the people that are in those lower income tiers.
And I don't think it's lowered the housing costs either. They're saying it's going to decrease the housing costs and make it more affordable, but I haven't seen that happen either. I've seen a lot of these developments that are still out of reach for a lot of people, especially like in Almaden Valley and some of these other more expensive areas. That's definitely not affordable housing to the average worker. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it used to be that a single salary, would buy you a decent home, and that's my parents in South San Jose there. They bought your average tract home. My dad was a single income earner for the family, had a family of, we have 5 kids, so a family of 7, and it used to be that you could purchase a home and make a decent living at that, which we did. And what we have seen housing costs just go sky high and become unattainable for a lot of people. Nobody wants that in their community. But what has been proposed has not been the answer. And part of it is the legislature just has not taken a look at what really will work. They've thrown this patch at it, assumed that density was somehow going to solve it. Well, it hasn't solved the housing affordability, and it certainly hasn't solved homeless, which, if we can use the state's word, the homeless crisis, the affordability crisis. Everything's a crisis, the water crisis, the crisis du jour in Sacramento. And so what we're seeing is an ineffective solution and a lot of negative impacts on communities who just don't want to have to live in an urbanized environment.
Well, it seems like they're doubling down, though. So aren't they trying to make some of these laws even tighter? Because cities maybe figure out a loophole how to bypass what they're trying to do. It seems like they're actually doubling down on what they're doing. I know in Morgan Hill, where I live, it's really rural. I have a lavender farm there with 2.5 acres. And there's a lot of people that have horses and stuff like that. They're trying to actually rezone everything to get rid of all ag, where you could have like the face of a winery, but you can't really grow any grapes. You got to get those somewhere else. Or you can have your lavender farm, but I can't, the face of it, and sell lavender products, but I can't really, actually harvest and grow. And they're also trying to get rid of horse properties. They're trying to zone all horses out, which is unbelievable to me. But this is what we see going on in California right now. And I think it's time to put the brakes on. So those of you listening to this, if you really want to see some change, we need some balance brought back to Sacramento. We've been under one-party rule for decades. In November this year, it's time we can change that. All we need is 7 Republicans to get elected to the California State Assembly, and at least we can start having negotiations, collaboration, and block some of the bills that aren't going to work, that we know aren't going to work, and at least have some discussion. Right now, because we're under one party rule, we really have no discussion for anything. We just need to do what we're told at this point, and this is what we've been told to do, and this is the effect of it. So I thank you today for joining us. I'm glad that you're fighting the good fight here and representing the people that elected you, because that's really what it's all about. It's about representing the citizens. And sometimes when you have a body, a government body like the state assembly, who have no local knowledge of what's going on or anything here, you get ignored. And I'm glad that we have somebody fighting for the voice of the people, really. Is there anything you want to add or say as a final word to anybody?
Well, I would just encourage people to reach out to your state legislators, not just your local ones, but reach out to all of them. Contact them. Let them know what this is doing in your communities, and let them know that there's consequences for people who continue to support this. As you mentioned, the state's doubling down on enforcement and really going after cities that they deem to be non-compliant. Fortunately, here in Scotts Valley, we've crossed our T's, dotted our I's. We have an excellent planning department, excellent city manager and city attorney who have made sure we're on track here. But who they're going to hear from is those community members. Mm-hmm. Get involved, research the candidates, and vote for that candidate that holds your values, your principles, and helps defend the type of community that you want to live in, not take over and invade your community.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. At the end of the day, people want a say in what happens in their own community. That's why we elect city councils, mayors, and local representatives to reflect our values, protect our neighborhoods, and make decisions that fit the character of the place we call home. Elections matter. Who we send to the Assembly and the Senate matters. Residents deserve leaders who listen to the people, not just to big donors and developers. And it's time for communities across California to reassert their right to shape their own future. Thank you for tuning in today. If you value this kind of honest conversation, please share the episode with friends and family, and most importantly, make a plan to vote in November. Your vote matters. California's future depends on engaged citizens like you. Until next time, stay informed, stay involved, and let's keep fighting for California's future. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care.